Welcome to Dawn Patrol. Today's crazy topic, relationships. It's a wild ride. Hold on tight. Watch out for drama clouds. Swerve. Woo! Crash landing. That's relationships for you. See you tomorrow. Dawn Patrol out.
Morning, Dawn Patrol. Man, I got to get a full cup of coffee before I start this. I got to show some pep in my step. Let me see here. Hey, Olson. Awesome. I expect you to answer from the shower. Just kidding. All right. So I was thinking a little more about yesterday. When I got off the stream, I thought to myself, man, this was a horrible stream. I don't know. I just felt so I didn't feel good only because I didn't think I conveyed my thoughts as much as or as well as I should have, as far as the overall theme, and I kind of went into uh, a couple of topics that not everybody would agree with. Morning ups. Um, I and because we're in this particular space, which is very, uh, I'd say mostly ecumenical. I mean, we all love each other. We're in a space where we're trying to learn, we're trying to grow, um, and there's also um, some that are still figuring this stuff out. And the last thing I want to do is be uncharitable with those people. I want to be, you know, I want to be hospitable, but I also want to still be clear about, why I believe what I believe. I was thinking a little bit more. I think Luke and I got into like he was sending some comments on on the channel, and yeah, I don't think I did. I do want to do a better representation. I don't know if I'd be able to do it this morning because this is an hour window, so we don't. I don't have as exhaustive of a space to frame this. So I'll just do the best I can. And if somebody comes on and I could talk a little deeper about it or whatever, it might help. But yeah. So um, last night was a long night for a lot of people. I tried to stay up for the whole game for the Monster Mash Party, and that was awesome. By the way, he cracks me up. Him and Ezra and the way that they get everybody to engage and have a good time is just so cool, And I think that's what's fun. It's not like anybody was talking theology or philosophy, they're just having a good time together. um, so yeah, I think that's a pretty important part of this space that we're in. And I was thinking about the differentials that we were setting yesterday about relationships when it came to uh, good morning, Matt. um, Relationships that we came to have in this space. I think some people were finding it not that big of a deal, or this is just internet, and for other people, I don't think that they feel that way. I, for one, am one of them. I also think that we uh, in addition to minimizing this space, I don't want to overplay this space and say this is the most important thing, because clearly community, I believe community at a church and being involved and plugged in and being an active participant is a pretty big deal. Um, so, and I mean, I can give you examples of that, but I think it was Chad's stream that I was bringing up how my church family um, shows me love. They don't. They're not as a regular part of my dialogue throughout the week. Some of them are, but by and large, But if I'm thinking about something or whatever, we text, we talk, and it'll get into a little bit of a conversation. But it's not like we're all doing life. But when stuff gets heavy, stuff gets overwhelming. I know there's pastors, there's friends that I do school with, and there's people at church that, you know, I mean, they've been there for me, at my weakest points. And I don't think that this place would be any different, but it is different when I'm sitting right in front of one of my close friends from church, and I'm weeping because I'm overwhelmed with something I'm going through. You know, there's a difference there. Again, I don't think you can have that in this space, but I do think that there is a little bit of a difference, a dynamic to the IRL there. But anyway, my bigger thing with it is that I'm trying to make sure that I don't overplay the internet or underplay the internet, and I don't sell it short. Um, my family probably a different thing. Again, once I was talking about the comparison to my church family is like when stuff happens, they're there. Now I have other people in my family that are there all the time. It's not there is no when things go rough and that's when they show up. But again, I'm good with that. I mean, that's when it matters. That's when that's when you really got a friend or you really have a family member that cares. Um, and they're not just seeking their own self-interest. And that's really special. And yeah, so, and I appreciate my parents and them raising like me and my brother, which transfers out from there. The way that they did their formation and how they came to be who they are. Um, Strangers, I think I mentioned it enough yesterday, just about the fascination I have for people that I might not really want to engage with, but when I step out and actually do engage them, God blows me away. He just those are the special moments where I get to see the image of Christ in somebody that it wasn't anticipating it. Even though we should all be seeing everybody in the image of Christ, of course, right? But there's a disconnect, right? And so the strangers thing was the other side of it. And then my coworkers, nobody this shouldn't come to a surprise for anybody. Nobody wonders what I think. I mean, I'm a pretty vocal guy. I communicate, potentially over communicate. The So there is a difficulty there, but I also am not one of those guys that, like the traditional Bible thumper where I'm at work and, everything has to be geared into the Bible or, every time somebody says something to me, I find a way to turn it into an apologetic or something. Cause I mean, they want real people and that to them doesn't seem very real. And that's fine. I don't think, I think if somebody does that, I don't think that's a problem either. I'm just saying, for me and trying to assimilate with this world and work with this world, ones that aren't Christian, ones that are Christian curious. Sometimes people are Christian curious. You didn't even know they were curious, but they're sitting there watching you just like your 5-year-old son would be watching his dad without actually saying it, paying attention to everything you do. Um, and like that's why they say do as I say not as I do doesn't work. They're going to be watching what you do because if it's good for you it's going to be good for others. So anyway, I love that I got Teo up in the morning. Well, actually, what is it, like 11, 10? What is it, 10 o'clock over there, Teo?
10:40, so you're more or less correct.
Nice. Yeah, see that right off the brain, man. This coffee's working.
How are you doing today?
Excellent. Yeah, so I'm glad you came on. I was trying to go over my thoughts. I don't know if you saw yesterday's more Dawn Patrol. But I got a little heat in the good morning, Miss B. I got a little heat in the comments, so I wanted to make sure I clarified some things if I needed to. Mr. Matt, good morning. Can you hear me?
Hey, good morning.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm glad you got up, man. That's awesome. How late were you? Did you guys stay up for the Grizz Monster Mash?
No, I missed that.
My eyes are starting to burn. Man, I felt so responsible too because I sat there and I had that. I had to, you had to be part of an active participant in the hive mind to help some of the guys on the board, And I was like, oh man, I got to go to bed, man. There's no way I'm going to pull this off. But it was really cool, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I know they've done that sort of thing on Discord before, I believe, but it's been a long time. It's been over a year, right, Tayo, since they've tried to do that on a stream. Glad they're doing it again.
Tayo, it's like almost 11, bro. I know you're not sleeping, bro.
No, I'm not. I'm not into the. So I recently, I think Nate from Grail Country tweeted something about a Discord for Dungeons and Dragons, and I joined the Discord for no longer than 30 seconds because I started scrolling down. I was like, I understand nothing. So gaming culture in general just goes over my head. The only one that I really watch is President Foxman, but I still don't understand it. So the gaming streams, good luck to you guys.
I mean, it's definitely not I didn't grow up doing those games and stuff, so there's not much nostalgia. But I think that because of the guys that were there playing and everything and the relationships I had with them, it was just kind of fun watching them do it. Like I'm like, wait a minute, I don't understand. You can't do this you can do this after the roll. You can't do this after the roll. Okay, trying to learn the roles, and they're clearly adjacent to other roles. So, yeah.
I still don't know whether it's savings throw or seedings throws.
So I'm getting back to the topic. Matt, did you get a chance to see yesterday's stream at all on the morning show?
I did.
What'd you think?
Well, it was great, and it reminded me, particularly the back end, the back 30 minutes or so. I think was particularly relevant to. I think that's probably the section that Luke Thompson caught. It reminded me that like I think periodically this corner of the internet has it wrestles with the fact that it's basically a Christian space to talk about secondary stuff that isn't primary. And people wrestle with whether or not that's a good thing that we're not talking about the primary stuff. And I think we always end up settling on, yes, it's a good thing that we're not talking about primary stuff, we're talking about secondary stuff for various reasons. And for Protestants in particular, particularly Reformed Protestants, we have our own ways to navigate whether or not we're comfortable with that. These ortho guys are super comfortable with it, particularly because of how they deconstructed and reconstructed. But I think for us, it is kind of a challenge because I think a lot of our foundational formation in our particular tradition is about making a clear distinction about what's primary and what's secondary, and not letting those streams overlap. And so we like to make distinctions so that it doesn't we're not even misunderstood as confusing the secondary and the primary stuff. And there's other people who have found traditions that freely don't particularly like to make a big deal about whether or not something's secondary or primary. But I think like people like, I think our ortho friends in TLC do know the difference. Particularly those who have been in TLC a long time. They just aren't making those. They just aren't making the distinctions the way we would like them to. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's been my sense, and I've been here not the longest, but I've been here like 3 years, and that's I don't know. We do this like annually, wouldn't you say, Tayo? We do this about once a year. We're like, we
I
gotta talk.
unfortunately did not catch up to the stream, so I don't have enough context. Nor did I watch yesterday's stream, so I can only infer from what I've read so far what's the line of um, dialogue is around. But
Well, it
Yeah.
started talking about relationships and the differential between, your work relationships or family, the value of this space, the value of real life relationships. Some people were holding some higher than others. So, some people were, kind of, I don't know, even downplaying like this space and the relationships here. So I don't know why, or I don't want to get into necessarily why they feel the way they do about those things. But what's interesting was I was trying to find a way to communicate with these folks and be a loving brother in Christ. Like I do believe there's a lot of I believe there's a lot of Christians in these traditions, even here in these traditions. But sometimes, like, if I have a question about, like, okay, there are people that are in high church traditions that will it's almost like they say that they accept the tradition and even maybe submit to the authority of that tradition. But my feeling is that there's still things that they just won't agree with on their own tradition. Um,
Oh, yeah.
and the honesty of that, and it's like, well, wait a minute, if this is the tradition, you know, are there things that I disagree with in my own tradition? Of course. I mean, but I'm not talking about, I guess the things that I'm disagreeing with are not even secondary. They're like third level. You know what I mean? It's like, so like it's a different thing. Does that make sense?
I'm still struggling to. What is it that you disagree with exactly?
Well, so like what had gotten my comments kind of blown up was I had brought up universalism as an example. Yeah.
See, Tayo knows. He's like, I've been on this.
Yeah,
On
and,
this
and, and I was
standpoint.
I thought I was pretty hospitable. I mean, I maybe not enough. I
You were. It's fine. It's just that's
Okay,
a
do you
very
know what?
big pet topic.
Enough said. You should have led with that. That would have given me all of the context I needed for
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
all of this.
this is map territory for Tayo.
That's quite funny. Yeah. Bringing up universalism is prone to blow up your comment section, especially if Luke gets it started.
Yeah.
But there was another phase of TLC that Matt would remember, the meta modern phase, where I think the summary of it is basically learning to love the tradition that you've deconstructed from, despite your deconstruction, sort of a thing. And that was an interesting thread that TLC pulled on for a while, but it became, I think, way more political. because the ideas came from the Viveki corner of the corner. So that's to your point about everyone having something in the tradition that they disagree with, and I think yes, that's true. And I don't know if universalists do, because you know what? I am not gonna. I was about to kick it off again. I'm not going to fall for this again. What else have you been thinking about lately?
I guess I am. So, when I was first starting to watch a lot of some of the content that I was consuming, because I was trying to find the channels. Mark Parker was one of them, and of course Luke, and I was just trying to find the channels. I didn't really have the database yet, and so these channels were interesting to hear how they were processing their whatever their tradition was, or where they were coming from, and kind of trying to understand where their formation was built on or from. And and at first I'm just like, even when I met PBK, I was like, I'm just trying to figure out like Mark Parker and Luke and this and that, and I'm like, but it's obvious that this is a space for everybody to come and have a engage in topics that we all like to engage in, and it's like a hospitable environment, and it's kind of like the idea that Chad was the stand by the door. It's like having somebody in this space that when a question gets put out, or a proposition that seems like they're thinking about it is put out, that somebody that actually has some, that has done some studying on this stuff, which a lot of people in TLC have done a lot of studying, right? There's no shortage of that. That they can actually have some sort of a dialogue, and it be charitable, and it be from love, and it's not me. I'm not trying to convince you of anything. I'm not trying to win you to my tradition, but how I came to the thoughts and the beliefs that I had. I could share that with you, and I don't think that that's me trying to change who you are. Now, because of what I believe, do I think the Holy Spirit does his own thing? If he wants to move you down a different path, of course I think that that's inevitable and possible. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah. Well, something that's interesting about TLC is that it emerges from a particular point in Western, primarily American history, when we've had various ways of trying to capture this with a term. I personally like the idea of secular Calvinism to describe it. Godless Calvinism, but other people have put other terms to it, where a lot of people had a really, really hard time from like 2014, 16-ish to 2020 with how culture was. And there was a lot that sounded a lot like original sin. There was a lot that sounded like limited atonement, but from a secular progressive perspective. These aren't terms that a lot of these people necessarily know, but they certainly know this. They know the term Puritanism, right? And they know what it looks like, and they know what it feels like to be judged because of their ancestors, or to be assigned a particular caste in society because of what's been determined is a fate that they deserve, and they deserved it before they were born. That's one thing that that contributed to deconstruction and led to people needing very proactively a space that could be the farthest thing from this kind of secular Calvinism. And I think a lot of people found universalism in TLC because of this. A lot of people found traditions that don't talk in these categories, aren't even concerned in these categories, like traditions in the East. And I think it's, exactly where the pain points are, the areas that are still bruised and very much still healing. When you hear that people say that TLC is a space for everyone to kind of talk about where they're coming from, except there's a few places where you might be coming from that we'd prefer you to talk a little less. And that would be the reform
as well. That will prefer you to not talk about where you're currently at. If you're anyway, yeah. It's
there's so wait so yeah say more.
There are. I think, Brett, you said earlier that everyone here is well studied. I don't know how true that is. I think everyone here is well versed in podcast land and YouTube video land. I think we've got a lot of people that are well studied for sure, but it's not the majority, not even by a long shot. I think the majority is mostly just internet weirdos like myself. And that's a big part of what the TLC is. It's this little kind of off the internet. The medium is the message. Shout out to Luke Thompson and them, man. But to the point about bringing up the studying thing is that there is a part of the TLC that's in trying to be as accommodative to and hospitable to as many fringe ideas as possible. It has the effect where the only sin is inhospitability. So a point of clarification can be seen as you being anti the culture of hospitability that the TLC is trying to cultivate. And I think, I don't know how true that is, but I also don't know how not untrue that is, because just by saying what you think, you are just representing an idea. You don't have to say this is the best idea ever. You are giving everyone else a chance to encounter that idea, and at that point, they might find it more threatening than you intended it, but you presented it, so there's no going back from that.
Yeah, that's the thing. I am acutely cautious of is not being able to uncommunicate things. Not that I would. I'm just saying that everything I say, um, could potentially, be such a thing that pushes someone so far away from me and me even being able to dialogue with them, and that is not my intent. I think some people definitely have better grounding on being able to have these conversations without them, having an emotional, making an emotional decision on just cutting Brett off. I can't do that. But it is cool. At some point, a couple people popped it up, watching what Parker did on this little corner of the internet, or this little quarter.net. Did you see those that grid of channels and how, like, the color clusters? I thought that was so cool. I mean, one of the coolest things about it was realizing, wait a minute, I would have thought my channel is more in this color because of the people that are in that color, right? But then I realized that I'm more adjacent to these other channels, which made me like, I haven't even been watching much of that. I want to check that channel out. Now, I mean, obviously, there's a risk of getting too much into your small group of ships that are in the flotilla, um, and creating and a silo being created. And that's, I think that obviously, if that's your channel and that's your channel, that's what you do. That's what you do. But I don't like that. I like going places where I don't necessarily agree with it. But I'm also not going to drop culture war issues in the comments either.
Oh, if you want the views, you should. uh, yeah, I'm
I
trying
think
to go on
there's
that.
a way in which there's a particular paradox here in this corner where the central channel is run by a Christian Reformed pastor who holds beliefs that are loudly and frequently described as POS theology. There was a whole era, slightly just before I got here, where everybody came together and agreed that he holds POS theology uniquely. There's all kinds of theologies. There's only one POS theology, and it's PVK's. And but somehow he's too nice for his POS theology, so he might not actually believe it. But that's interesting enough to keep showing up and keep engaging him and try to figure out, can we convert him, even though we're not really into conversion approaches? Can we kind of tease this out and bring him into our space? Or maybe maybe there's something we missed. Maybe it isn't so POS. Maybe we're just mischaracterizing it. That was a little quieter, but that led to people paying attention. That was interesting enough to keep him to be the central spoke in the flotilla. And if so, all that to say, if you want to lean into being the heel a little bit, or to understand that this is a hostile space for some theologies more than others, like infernalism being one, to say nothing of Reformed theology. Just believing in hell puts you in a heel category, an antagonist category a little bit around here. But if you lean into that in a loving way, the way PVK does, you're going to have fun here. And you're going to get your comments blown up.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't think, I don't think I rewatched the episode just to make sure that I didn't, that I wasn't completely brutal, but I also understand how people can perceive it differently, even if it was put out there a certain way. Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's like, I mean, when I put out things about universalism as an example, and I'm not trying to open up this whole thing all over again, in general. Um, I guess if people ultimately reach the same eternal destination, right? Regardless of their choices or their moral significance in human history or the collapse or um then good and evil ultimately is irrelevant, you know. It's how I see it. Now that may be considered a straw man. I don't know. I
Yeah,
also
that
know.
would be that would
Well,
be considered a straw man because they they eventually is doing a lot of heavy lifting for both you and them. For you, you're sort of skipping past the eventually to be like, okay, it, but to them, the eventually is where that individual gets to learn about the good and evil and get to repent. And it's not just there is no justice. It's the justice is going to be in a merciful mode that ultimately means you will have no choice but to repent and repent genuinely. It might take you it it might take a different person longer than the other, but you will come to the repentance stage. So the eventually that you've just sort of skipped past, to them it's a big part of the where the good of evil doesn't get lost, because it's still in there.
Yeah, a central part of this particular universalism, which they get a lot from folks like George MacDonald, is that purgatory is a really big central feature where this stuff gets we all get smelted down and refined in the love of God so that we're all reconciled to each other and to him in that particular era. So that's a crucial feature. That's more important, honestly, than I think this age is that
Yeah.
particular age for them.
Yeah, which I think is bullshit, but you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, because whether we're here or in purgatory, doesn't it? I mean, it seems like it fails to account adequately for human freedom, or accountability. I don't know. Yeah. So
Oh,
I don't know.
you're a Calvinist. You should have a problem with theology that seems to imply that human freedom is
100%.
not as big of a deal.
I brought this up on yesterday morning's thing. I said, listen, I get it. There's parts of my tradition that, man, I mean, part of me really hopes I'm wrong. I mean, I really do. Would I love a certain element of that? Yeah, but I also don't want to give up the idea of a just God and what I believe a just God would be like. For I think some a just God would be this universal proposition, and I think others would see it differently. So I can see the draw and the repulsion of both sides of this, and I think there's also in all of these spheres, I think that there is some that lean like just take charismatic for example. There's those in all these traditions, so it's not like it's an exclusive thing or a liberal theology or we have these pockets within all these traditions that have groups that struggle with different parts of the rest of the body. They're kind of on the outside of it, judging it, but they're still there, which is kind of another weird thing altogether. Like I don't not really sure how that works. Like when Mark Parker said he was going to be a Catholic, or he was at least moving in that direction, I was like, wow. Like I just to me, I didn't see that even coming based off of the little information I saw, because it seems so strict and very dogmatic on certain topics that I didn't think he was down with at all. But then I heard some of his rationalization on being able to just say, well, that's the church's responsibility. I'm not making kids anymore. I don't have to worry about that. And, it's like he was making a personal thing that, well, it wasn't no big deal, but I did think that was bizarre, and I get the feeling I haven't had a chance to talk to Luke, and we want to do that at some point. We've talked about it briefly in the comments, but I will come kind of curious to what part of his tradition he doesn't necessarily line up with. Is it the whole thing, or is it part of it that you're still not 100% on?
Oh boy. But you're gonna have to bring him on your show.
Yeah. We talked about it.
Oh, good. Yeah, I know.
No comment.
Well, I think with him and I think I'm a pretty good communicator. That doesn't mean that anybody's gonna necessarily hear what I'm saying, and I get that, you know. And same with Luke. There's times where he's talking, and I'm like, okay, we've hit vocabulary that now is not as clear. So now at this point, I'm like, I have to, you know, we have to parse out what these words mean to each of us, right? And how I'm perceiving it, and how it's almost like in marriage counseling, you know, one of the things they would teach people to do is do mirroring, you know, where you'd say something and I repeat it how I understand what you're saying. And if the person finally agrees, then you can move on and you can say your part. But if the person says, that's not what I'm saying, you know, and they have to go back over what they just said to repeat it, you know what I mean? And it's just healthy communication. But it's like you're teaching these couples that can't communicate at all, you know, the best way to communicate, which is kind of a normal. I mean, this makes more, I mean, it makes logical sense that yes, you need to know what the heck the person's talking about. No?
I would love to see you do marriage counseling with with Luke Thompson.
I would
That
not.
would be
God no. God no. Oh God no.
because I don't think Luke's great about mirroring, and I think that's important.
I don't think it can. I don't think
No.
it can stay.
And I think it's almost like central to his theology in a way.
Yeah, he's he's Mosaic, which is anti-mirroring.
Yeah. But to be fair to him, like I think I know enough about how he thinks. Like I think I can pattern him a little bit here and starman him. So there's another unclear term. Actually, no, I'm gonna steel man him. So like Brett, you don't think that a God who sets up a scenario in love that allows every single person, including people who were sexually violated by another, people who committed acts of war against others, like that every single person can reconcile with those who sinned against them, and every person who did sin against someone else can reconcile with their victims. And because they're all made in the image of God, so they all have that capacity to reflect that character of God's reconciliatory love. So like could you not see that like the maximal good outcome of everyone reconciling to each other, and in a way therefore reconciling to God, wouldn't be the most logical thing that a perfectly all-knowing, all-loving God would plan out and accomplish for humanity?
I think that when you start it's the same argument I think on my tradition about free will. It's weird how they parallel, you know. On one hand, okay, I see that the way that is expressed and why that would be appealing and why it seems to make logical sense. But on the other hand, if God loves me, he's not going to force me to do anything, right? So, you know, this has to be a complete free choice that I make. That's my will, that does not impede in a logical sense with his sovereign decree, right? His overall plan of salvation for again, I would say the people that he calls to him. Now, how do you reconcile with that? You know, the hardest part about being a reform is to say the tension is there, and it is what it is. I don't have to necessarily, you know, logically break it down so you understand the difference between God's will versus my will, and how that they just are. And the tension's there, and you have to leave it there only because I believe that this is what I'm reading from the Bible, and I don't have to understand exactly how the Trinity works. It just is. You know, I see it there, It's not broken down logically or scientifically or explained thoroughly. Yes, the word isn't in there, but you can clearly see three persons distinct. You can clearly see all of them God. So this is how the early fathers have come to these conclusions, and same with universalism. I mean, Origen was probably one of the more controversial, you know, church fathers that I mean, what was it, the fifth council, I think it was, where they said no go, you know, like this is not, we're not, this is not what we're doing. And then the churches beyond that continue to say, yes, this is not what we believe, this is not what we believe, this is not what we believe, all the way till the current time.
Including many Eastern Orthodox traditions.
Exactly.
You're right.
That's right.
Yeah.
It was a minority position. I mean, there was definitely an East and West in the way that they were, you know, coming into everything, but predominantly over both sides of the scales, they came down pretty hard on it. So I guess I understand the desire to want to lean into. Again, this is so, I don't want to be I don't want to come off, I'm just going to say it. I understand why I would want to have a God that makes sense to me, meaning, like, I want a God that is like this. I want a God that's just going to love me or love all people, you know, just like I love all people, you know, like just that just makes sense to me. But like I'll never forget when I was reading and studying the story of Jacob and Esau, right? And I was like, what? He hates? Wait a minute, what? And then I did a deep dive on actually the words that were actually being translated as, you know, Jacob I have loved, Esau I've hated. It wasn't hate. The translation is probably more accurately love different. And it's like, wait a minute, what does that mean? Now and then I start learning theologically about what common grace is, and the idea that you know that that rain is going to fall on the just and the unjust. Like, it's like the way that he corridors scenarios and puts things together and helps orchestrate some of the worst things that have happened in the world, and somehow that hard stone that hit that lake broke and created this massive ripple effect. So although the stone didn't stay on the surface and sunk to the bottom, it was, you know, let's call that the bad situation. It created this beautiful ripple that just cascaded across the entire lake and made the light just shimmer off of every little wave and every ripple, and became so beautiful, to use an abstract metaphor. And I just think that that's what's so special about how I see the creator of the universe dealing with sin, you know? So I don't know if that was coherent, but
It was.
that's the best way I can think of it.
Yeah. You will be accused of having a lack of imagination for your stance. You will be confused. You will be accused of a lot of things that will confuse you. But just be prepared that that's coming, and it's coming from a place of hurt and a place of love from these brothers and a few sisters. But it's coming.
Yeah.
Actually, it's already here, I guess, from your comics section. So.
No, I wasn't. I'm trying not to read it because there was a couple in there that just started going, you know, crazy. So I was like, all right, I'm not doing that. I'm going to focus on the people that are in front of me.
Yeah.
Well, we got 10 minutes. What do you think, Teo? Teo's the best.
I think that simply by presenting where you're currently at, you're inviting conversation of why you should be somewhere else. That's just the way of the internet.
Oh
And
boy.
the way the TLC, particularly, I've been, we've only got 10 minutes, so I can't do that much damage in this 10 minutes because I've been holding my tongue with the universalist thing best I can. But there's a, and I'll try my best to Starman or Stillman, whichever one is the right one. They're very prickly, the Universalists. They see the Universalist position as the most persecuted Christian position you could take. And they're very they want you to be precise when presenting their arguments, which I understand because it's very easy to imagine these are just hippie Christians that love everyone and don't want anything to do with justice or any difficult decisions, and it's just a peace, love. But the reality is they do take seriously the wages of sin and try to account for it in their theology best they can. So that's not my issue with my issue with the Universalist is that it's just so arrogant, and when you point that out to them, they don't say it. It's yes, we've all got wishful thinking about the way eschatology should play out, but you're not God. And what happens when you find out God's not universalist? Is that going to make you? Is like, are you going to say no? That's not my God. And I think it comes down to the God of your own understanding meme that the TLC again promulgates. But I say all that to say I've seen and I've had a version of the conversation you're going to have with Luke a number of times, and I don't want you to. I don't want you to go in there thinking you're going to convince him or that he's trying to convince you either, and you're both just going to be pitching back and forth to each other where you're currently at, and that's what TLC is.
Yeah, that's good. Do me a favor. This is not going to be. It's not necessarily. What is this? Inner dialogue anymore. So we will have to just
Christians have no idea what they believe. The Trinity makes no sense. Why won't Christians just engage with the politics of the time, the free speech amendment of the Americans? The Americans!
Wait, is that Claire?
Yes, that's Teo pretending to be me, I think. I just came on to agree with you, Brett, about your position against universalism. That is your position, isn't it? I haven't misunderstood.
I think that you can definitely grasp this for sure. I think you know, from the things that are important to you, I think that you definitely see this this way for sure.
Yeah, so as Teo was saying, I also came to agree with you, Teo, because if the traditional belief system was that good will be rewarded and evil punished in the afterlife, who just said, oh, there's no hell? I just find it, almost unbelievable that somebody, I don't even know who it is, said, oh, well, we shouldn't worry about it because everybody gets to heaven. It's like, well, who said? And what's the point of saying that? Doesn't it just make everybody complacent and make criminals think, well, if I'm going to heaven, what's a problem with being a really bad person? But then Ron Copperman said an interesting thing on the Chris Howard show, because he was saying, when we were talking about forgiveness, that heaven will be full of sex offenders and murderers, which is quite a thought. But also, I guess people will be I mean, there is a concept of redemption which is present in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So we're not
That's
quite
the
sure what
version
to
of
make of it, really.
universalism I find most compelling. The
Sorry?
McMosev. The version of universalism I find most compelling is the one best articulated by McMosev. Ko-fi link down below, saying only the universalists shall be saved. Meaning, unless you're willing and to forgive the sex offenders, the murderers, the liars in your own life, and the people that will be in heaven that you don't want to be there with you, you won't be there. That makes sense to me.
Well, I mean, I think that there's a science fiction imagination of hell. It's Earth where nobody ever dies, and we're just sort of stuck with everybody's ever born, and that is a vision of hell.
We're one big happy family here. Hi, Mark.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Good. So I've been trying to resist jumping on, but let's go with the idea that heaven is perfect and that if you want to go to heaven, you have to be perfect. And so
I think we just have to repent in time. You just have to repent in time.
Hang on, let
Right.
Mark land. He's trying to build us something. Let Mark build it. Mark, carry on. We're going with
And
the idea.
so
Heaven's perfect.
then we get this idea of purgatory, which is like a waiting station while you learn to perfect yourself. Are you silent?
Just
I'm
waiting for
listening.
you to land, mate. Just giving you the space to build your
Thanks,
argument.
Taya. I mean, that's how I understand the, what to call it, doctrine, maybe?
Redemption? Are you aware of the doctrine of
You can use that word
redemption?
if you want. I mean, it's not my doctrine especially, but that's my understanding of what this doctrine means.
Yeah, you have to say sorry, and God might forgive you. You know, it's the story of Jonah, isn't it?
I think it's a
They
bit more than
repented
just
and
saying
were saved.
sorry. You have to become perfect,
Well, yes,
as
you have
Christ was
to.
perfect.
Well, nobody's
Yeah, Taya,
perfect.
don't
I mean, the
don't skip
idea
the
that
perfect
we're
path.
genuinely sorry. What?
Don't. I said don't skip past the perfect past. Only perfect people can be in a perfect place. That's what Mark is presenting. Now, how do you get perfect people into this perfect place when, like you said, no one's perfect? Insert the gospel.
But
Except
the
what?
requirement is not to be perfect, but to be genuinely remorseful and make amends for whatever wrong we did.
That's
What.
that Mohammedist theology. Don't bring that around here. God requires perfection where I'm from.
Yeah, think about it. If God was perfect, right?
Well, then you're
how
all
can-
going to hell.
How can he even be? Well, this is the thing. What was done on the cross was what changes us and how he sees us, and that's a fundamental difference, and why I can understand. Why I feel I understand this a little bit better. Again, not smarter or who is that? Mark? Yeah.
Sorry, dog's going nuts. I'm going to check it
That's
out.
okay. You gonna mute it? Yeah. So the idea, the way that, and again, not all traditions are believing this. I understand that, but I'm just explaining my understanding of the way that it works is that my sins were put on the cross. Christ took the sins, and there was a transfer between me to him and then also him to me. And ultimately what that does is it allows God to see me in a way that is not the way the world and we understand it. And so being in heaven, yeah, I can't be an unrepentant sinner in heaven. But that's also because my heart is different and how I feel about God is different than just I'm a sinner and I don't care, or I'm a sinner and I really do care, you know? And maybe that's a little disjointed. I'm trying to think of the simplest way to frame this to explain why God would even want it to be in our presence, you know, and how that's possible. But I understand that may
Well,
not.
he created us. If that's the story. If there's any truth to the story. We are his creatures. We are part of his creation. And he expects certain things, but not perfection, surely.
Oh, you underestimate the
It's
creator.
obedience.
You
It's obedience,
underestimate
right?
the creator. You think yeah, not my God. Not my God.
There's only one Abrahamic God.
And
There's
he
only
requires
one.
perfection.
I don't
I'm
think
not even
so.
sure if
Otherwise,
that's
he wouldn't
true,
make all
Claire.
those rules.
Matt, you're being
And
awful
I
smart and quiet.
think Ron Copperman is probably right.
I think so too.
I usually think
On the
yeah,
question
that's
of
a
heaven
safe
being full
assessment.
of.
Hold on. What, Matt?
No, if Ron Copperman is expressing a sincere belief, it's probably a direction we should lean towards too. Yeah, all I have to say, like I'm trying to be respectful of your time, Brett, because I know you have a stopping point. I like to think of myself as I'm a hopeful infernalist, and some days on my best days I am a universalist in the sense that I believe we're all going to hell.
There we
And
go.
that's the God that I worship. So I'd like heaven to be entirely vacant. So and that's my position. And anyone who holds a different position lacks imagination. But I hope that you get there soon.
Well
And on
put.
that note, oh boy. I mean, I do like the conversation. I really appreciate you guys getting on, some early, some midday. But either way, I really do appreciate you guys coming and joining me, because without you, this would have been just me rambling and probably getting into deeper crap. So I got to end this because I do want to respect Chris Howard's slot, and we probably only missed a song, but I do appreciate it. Hopefully, you can maybe do this again. I think Scott is doing tomorrow. So anyway, with that, I'll see you guys later. Thank you very much.
Right?